here we are, episode 15 with a very, very special guest, somebody that I've kind of heard, mutterings about back when I used to follow League of Legends. And now he's not necessarily recently joined Overwatch. He's been in the scene for, quite a few years, which is Curryshot, the strategic coach of Mayhem Academy. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right.
Making sure that the title is correct.
Correct.
Joining me on episode 15, and I want to jump into a little bit of a story time. So I like to do a little bit of a dive into my subject, right? And look into some interesting facts. I've scrolled through the Twitter. I've, just done a brief scan. And obviously you have your Wikipedia page on League of Legends subreddit. And on there, it mentions that you jumped off the Andes Mountains with a parachute. Walk me through either why, how, maybe some memories of exactly what that was like. Could you give us a brief story time?
Yeah, so it's kind of dark in the sense that how I got there. I'll go back to the beginning. Okay.
Sure.
I was in my freshman year of university, and basically, I was playing a ton of League, right? And I remember I went back in the summer, and my parents saw how much League I was playing, every day. And I have really strict Indian parents, right?
Sure.
This is way back in the day when I was 18, right? So it's been a lot of years, right? And they were really, really strict, and they didn't like how much time I was spending in front of the computer. So basically, they sent me to another country and in South America, and I had to work basically in an office warehouse, right? To basically make ends meet, right, or whatever, right?
Sure.
So they stopped paying for my university and stuff like this. And basically, instead of looking at all the negatives and stuff like this, I tried to make the best out of that experience, right? Let's try new foods. And then I realized there was something I could do. I would see the parachutes, right? It's called the activity is called parapenta in Spanish, right? I always see them in the top. And then I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and do it, right? And when I did that, it's so weird, and this is gonna sound really, really dense, but when you're up there, the atmosphere is round, believe it or not.
Sure.
It's not, the earth is not flat, and it made me think in a very, very different way, in the sense that when you're up there and you're floating in the sky and everything, you see the sea, everything, it gives you some sort of clarity, right? In what you want to do. And immediately when I realized what am I doing up here, I want to do this, etc. I realized I really want to follow my dream, and then be a professional league coach. So basically, after that experience, I went back. I worked in that office warehouse for as long, as much as money as I could make.
Sure.
And then when I had enough money, I came back to the United States. And I couldn't just, go straight into League. I joined, at the age of 19, I joined Allegiant Airlines as a creative technologist, where, I worked there, and then during my lunch breaks, I used to write scripts and stuff like that, where I made the Advanced Tactics series on League of Legends. And basically after that, that kicked off. It would have anywhere from 20 to 200,000 views. And then when that kicked off, basically a lot of teams were starting to show interest in having me coach their team. So basically, that activity, why it was so important for me, is because I always remember the thoughts that I had when I was up there. And as weird as that is,
no, it's not weird at all.
Once you do it, you realize. Yeah,
No,
it really makes you think they're different. So,
do you to kind of dive into that, because it's something that I've recently, I listen to some comedy podcasts, so comedians like Bert Kreischer and that whole kind of scene of comedy, podcasts, and they talk about Bert Kreischer in particular, this kind of big comedian. You may have seen his story of him in the Russian mafia, kind of. Yeah, it's a story. Look it up. It's funny. Where he had a show on the Travel Channel where he would do all these death-defying roller coasters, and doing what you mentioned, kind of jumping off of stuff that are a human really shouldn't be jumping off of. And he talks about it over Will Smith's most recent birthday, If you remember seeing that in the headlines, how he like jumped out of a helicopter into the Grand
Oh,
Canyon
right,
for his
right,
like
right, right.
50th
Bungee
birthday.
jumps.
Yeah, yeah.
He bungee jumped, right.
And he kind of like adds commentary to it because he kind of connects with him. Bert kind of connects with Will Smith for a second. It's like you don't really get to evaluate your life when you're if you're not put into a position where you're so close to dying. So does that kind of make a little sense on maybe why that is so it has so much kind of tranquility to it?
Yeah, it really puts things into perspective, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, I never was in like the mafia or anything like this. Like the worst thing I saw when I was in Chile, like in South America, I remember I was in a roundabout, right?
Sure.
And there was a bus right in front of me, and then where they store the luggage, I saw some guy open the thing and start running, and then the bus driver get out and just chase him around the roundabout. That's like the weirdest thing I saw. But after that, that wasn't really life changing for me. That just like it's just something I remember because like what the hell, like what?
Well,
Like,
at what point in your
of all,
life do you need to do this?
But no, what I don't understand, the guy instead he was just, like running around the roundabout, run away, or like something. First of all, don't steal. I'm not doing that. But I mean, like,
sure.
What was the thought process?
Not an advanced
Maybe that's
strategy.
why I wanted to become a coach, because I saw the thought process.
You're already like, yo, if you're gonna steal, go this way into it. Like
Yeah.
there's a building, maybe you have like a driver, you get away. I don't know, like something.
I don't know. This
You're gonna get
silly.
So, like you mentioned, this kind of spurred the drive and the motivation to really pursue your dreams of coaching in League of Legends, which you were a player before, and you've worked with a number of notable teams. For those of you remember, back in the day of the Team Ember, if I remember correctly, they had like a lot of how you would say a lot of resources available to them, if I remember correctly. That's when
they're quite wealthy. Yeah,
for sure. Obviously, the plan didn't pan out. Again, happens. League of Legends relegations. Happens to the best of us. Working with Team Fusion, which is a team that I did like because.
Okay. Oh, you did? What happened?
I don't. It's been so long that I honestly can't remember why I even bothered. Like.
Okay.
Kind of looking at that, and I was just like, oh yeah, I've heard good things about fusions. It might have been on like a podcast with like Monty or Thor and kind of like hyping him up, or maybe I heard like Kelsey Moser talk about it. I have no idea. But I remember hearing good things. I'm like, oh yeah, I hope Fusion does good. Like I remember like on the early days, like hearing good things about him. Obviously Ember with Weldon, again heard good things. Obviously it didn't come to pass, and obviously you worked with CLG, which I've been a big fan of for a long time. Kind of grew up watching them and appreciating them, even in their most troubling days. Gotta stay faithful. So walk me through that whole League of Legends experience. Some of the highs, some of the lows. Maybe some not favorite players, because that's a little bit touchy subject for coaches for sure. But some of your most memorable, most fond memories. We'll put it like that.
So with Team Fusion, it wasn't my first team. Like I was this as a player on the LCS expansion tournament. But then I started, coaching. I coached Final 5, and whenever I joined the teams that I coached, I always joined. Basically, Final 5 was, I believe, 6th place, and then they got to 2nd, and then I got poached for Fusion. And then they were 4th at the time, and then again we went to 2nd on that team. I've like historically joined teams that were I wanted like the challenge, basically, right?
Sure.
Because same thing, like for instance, how like I'm gonna use a battle royale as an example, right? For so it can be relatable. But some people like they play a battle royale and they just like run around and then try to like get as many kills, and that's how they learn the game, right? If somebody hides the entire time, they're not gonna learn the proper mechanics, right?
Sure.
So for me, same thing. Like I took the challenge and I really wanted to communicate to people and then really understand the different styles of learning, right? And it was really nice to do it this way. So League of Legends for me was an entire like learning experience, and I guess like that would be like one of my favorite moments. In terms of like players individually, I loved working with Huhi. I really did. And as you saw the comment about how when he was like right after we lost in promotion LCS promotion match, I made a comment about how he would basically be one of the best players, and I made a comment about Faker and stuff like that with him, right, relating to him, and people were calling me crazy, whatever. That you can't make it. He's just a player. How can you think this of him? Like he hasn't achieved anything or whatever. And then later on at MSI, you'll see that he played versus Faker, and then within the span of around a year and a half, and he played versus Faker, and then they won versus them at MSI. So imagine that not so many people had that faith as
Definitely,
CLG.
yeah.
There you go. But it did come to pass, and it's not so much that like I'm having blind faith in my players, is because it's just I know when I work with somebody, like if they show me their best, I can see the best, and I can see like how far they can go, and that's what I saw in him.
When it came to, I'll probably reference this interview a lot, so I'll definitely link it in the description. You did an interview with Gamehouse where you talked about your time with Team Ember and working under, or I would say with Weldon Green, who is this, very notable. I've heard everything from, snake oil salesman to, one of the best, support staff coaches I've ever worked with. There is a varying degree of how Weldon Green is viewed. And again, for those of you who don't know, very prolific esports kind of sports psychologist or sports psychology trainer. To his credit, I will have to correct myself because, don't want to get him in trouble. So as somebody who's worked directly with him, what are your thoughts? It seemed like he had a pretty big impact on you. Just a general kind of synopsis.
He had his perspective was really the impact, because it opened up a new world of things that I had to think about, right?
Sure.
So again, like I had a problem when I first started coaching, where I would show emotion and I would get really mad at somebody if they had a differing view or something like this, and a lot of coaches are like this.
Sure.
And that's just not the way to do it. So figuring out how the brain works and stuff like this, and how people learn, and how to control my emotions to get a point across, and then when you eliminate emotion through basically psychology, people learn really quick when emotion's not involved. So an example would be like in VOD review, right?
Sure.
I don't want my players to talk right away, or sorry, after a game, after a scrim, right? To talk right away. They simmer for around a minute, collect their thoughts and their emotions, and then they talk. So there's no outburst. You know what I mean? So like with Weldon Green, he taught me a lot about the perspective of sports psychology, of like how to prepare for a match and stuff like that. So it was definitely an experience. I hope did that answer your question?
No, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Just you hear things, right? You hear things from every side, from the player side, from other, sports psychologists, and it's an interesting perspective for somebody who's actually worked directly with him.
Yeah, and I'm not saying Weldon was perfect, because
of course, who is?
I'm not throwing him under the bus, but everybody has their own issues.
Of course.
And like for instance, I'm working with Robert right now. Robert Yep, he worked for Immortals back in League, and now he's with Misfits, right? And he's a really good sports psychologist as well, right? And he kind of leaves. He's very focused on his job title as a sports psychologist and doesn't try to do in-game stuff, right? So both have their pros and cons, but Weldon had a really good perspective, but nobody's perfect.
Definitely, totally agree. Now, contrasting that as we kind of move away from League of Legends and your kind of, timeline, we go from diving off a mountain with a parachute on, having this moment of clarity, like, oh, League is our calling. And now we kind of transition to Overwatch. So how did that happen?
Well, first of all, before we get into the Overwatch, please, I'm not saying, like, I can't wait for the Redditor going, you know what? I'm gonna go jump off the mountain right now with a parachute. I want to be a pro player, pro. Yeah, let's go. And I'm like, please. Okay, but yeah, going into Overwatch, basically, I started streaming, and I was doing really, really well. I was streaming with Poklows, who was a good friend back in League, and
doing some sort of GTA RP thing.
Now he is, yeah. And it was going really successful. I was averaging around 1,200 viewers. I was really having fun with the game,
Mm-hmm.
and at the time I only played McCree and like Reaper, Tracer. Like I was only like a hit scan person, right?
Sure.
And I was pretty good at it. So people used to watch me, and yeah, it was going great. But I told myself that I needed a break from esports because I was doing it since 2013, and that's I think Overwatch came out in 2016, right?
Something like that. Yeah, 2015 was like the announcement trailer.
Oh,
2016.
sorry, I meant like open to everybody. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think. Oh, yeah, it was like May or
2016,
June.
like
Yeah, yeah.
early
Sure,
2016 was like open beta, something like that.
sure. So I wanted a break from esports, and streaming was going great, but you always get that competitive itch.
Sure, sure.
And I'm somebody who loves to compete and somebody who loves to like win. And I couldn't hold myself back. So I didn't want to play again. Like I wanted to be the best coach I could be and help people achieve their dreams. So
Mm-hmm.
as well as my own.
There is a kind of a trait in people that kind of like a teacher trait, right? Where it's not about me, it's very selfless, and it's like I want to give and try to help facilitate, right? And is that something you've seen throughout your life, or is this something as we all get older and grayer and saggier, something that you've kind of fell in love with, this kind of like selfless attitude where it is about building people instead of just building yourself?
It's something that it's always been like it's for me it's always been like this. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've had multiple opportunities to push myself forward in life and
Sure.
be at a different height, but it would be at the expense of somebody else, and I can never do that.
Mm-hmm.
I can never do that. Like I always want to see other people succeed, and I think it's funny that you say this teacher trait because I hear this a lot. All my players, they always say this. Like they call me, one of them calls me dad, and like stuff like this. So
Hey, it's an important, the way that it was kind of posed to me, or somebody that had given me a very poignant quote was like, you have to be, the disappointed father and like the doting mother, right? Where
yeah,
there is their relationship with the players that, at times it's a balancing act, right? You have to be, not aggressive, but, assertive, right? I guess that would be the best word. So
yeah.
I definitely understand that. But and again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I have it that you've joined Euphoria, which was like an open division squad, I think 2017, 2018 open division.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, 2018.
Now, was that the first team that you joined?
Yeah, it was. It
Okay.
was, and it was a lot of players who basically never made it to a certain level, and they really wanted to. And I told them like, we're putting a big part of our lives apart, so you need to work really hard for this. It's not just going to happen to you.
Sure, sure.
And we went forward and we did it. So, and I'm sure Contenders Trials might not be a huge achievement in terms for the general population when they see Overwatch League and stuff like that. But imagine being a player that has tried for a year, like a year, and then not been able to really succeed with it, but really putting the work and time apart to actually make it happen. Like my players always say in Euphoria, always say nice things about me or whatever, but truly like I hold like the utmost respect for them. Yeah, they might not be in Overwatch League, but I don't like when I hear, oh, he's a good coach, or here, he was the best coach, whatever, right? Because it really takes away value because they work just as hard and they need the credit too.
Definitely. Now, how did you get in touch with One.Point? How did that kind of move start, and why exactly go to EU? Is this another one of those challenge accepted kind of moments in your life?
I mean, I've coached every region across multiple titles, really, but more so, it wasn't a challenge. Reddit is always going to, or the community is always going to hate me for this. I always preface it with this because, the unpopular opinions and the heat I get for this is unreal. But I'm just being real. At the time, I had a paid NA offer, and when I was trialing in EU for a week, I trialed with Angry Titans, One.Point, and I really liked One.Point. I realized like how far ahead they were at the time. And I took it as a time to really develop my players, myself, to try to be the best team. And because of this, I could have been waking up at a normal time in North America with a nice, paid gig or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, no, challenge accepted. And those players in Europe, and especially in One.Point, they have nothing, and they work so hard to try to get something. And that's that motivated me as well, and it was just reciprocated on both sides. So I'm despite us, getting first in our group and then losing to Giganti,
Hmm.
uh, it's something I don't regret, and those players also have a lot to be proud of.
Yeah, I don't think it's
Yeah,
shameful at all to lose to
yeah.
the eventual champion. That's almost something to rest your hat on. It's like, oh well, if we didn't get like such a bad draw, maybe we would have won, or maybe we would have done more successful, or maybe we just didn't get sick on New Year's. Maybe we do
Yeah,
even better.
sick on New Year's. Yeah, and maybe I should tell the story actually.
Go ahead if you want to.
Okay, so the story is Hardest, one of our players, told everybody like because they wanted to go out for New Year's, right? Can we have this day off? We want to go out for New Year's. He's like, no, don't go out for New Year's. You're going to get sick. And everybody's like, what? Like, no, we're just going to go out for New Year's or whatever, right? 4 of our players get sick, and then like we scrimmed 3 times in the 2 weeks that went into our final match. And Hardest, he was somebody who didn't like to leave the house during the season because he didn't. He's like really like so focused on winning that he didn't want to get sick. So it's just funny to me that it actually happened. Looking back, obviously not in the moment, because that shit was depressing, because like being on top and being the best, and I mean at the time being the best and then losing, it was not so good. Obviously we weren't the best at the time. I'm not taking anything away from Gigante because they did play a better series than us. But leading up to that, we were definitely playing a lot better.
Fair enough. Now, from One.Point, we go back to NA, and is this the paid gig? Is this another challenge? Exactly what drew you away from Europe and to back to North America? Was this more of a business move? Was this right fit, right time? Why exactly Mayhem Academy?
I did have a lot of offers in Europe still, as well as in NA, but basically it was more so I have my house here in North America or whatever, and I realized like I needed a path up, because I do, when I was a streamer, for instance, I did not have the best reputation because of how much fun I had in solo queue. I did not troll, but I had a lot of fun in solo queue.
Sure.
And then I needed a path up, and I needed to show what I had to offer basically. And when I tried out for these teams, I got offers from them, and then I realized like Mayhem was definitely one that at the time offered me a path up, right? And basically, yeah, I decided that was good, because I don't have anything wrong with, because in One.Point I had to wake up at 4 a.m. every day, but honestly that didn't bother me at all, because I love starting my days off in the morning. You know what I mean? So
definitely,
it didn't really bother me. So yeah, no, actually, this kind of bothers me in a sense. Like, it's as weird as it sounds, because in North America, like, scrims start around like maybe 1-ish, right? And sometimes they start at 10, and I like those days, 10 a.m. to like 3 p.m., right?
Sure.
Or something like this. But I don't like the schedule. Like, if it goes to like 9 or 10, you know what I mean? Like at night, it's not very good. Like mentally, it's for not for me, but also like for some of the players it can be draining. And I also like I'm very strict in terms of like sleep schedules for my players. So I it's really important that they get 8 hours of sleep, right?
Definitely.
So that's why I like to have this kind of like set schedule, right?
And you got stuff changing all the time, messes up with the way that
and
your
you're most
body
productive.
works.
Yeah, you're more productive when you have a substantial amount of sleep.
Now, we kind of talked about this previously before the show, but I kind of wanted to dive into it. Because you've worked in so many different regions, in so many different titles, one thing that has popped up time and time again, or is just something that maybe I have observed, is the willingness to win in Europe seems to be such a core tenet of all the players, that they don't care. We might not get along, we might have incredibly differing opinions, but when we're in game, we work together, right? It's very professional. Whereas in North America, things are a little bit more
laid back.
Yeah, laid back would be a good way to phrase it.
Yeah.
would you say that that's necessarily the case? Is that accurate, would you say? And where do you think that kind of comes from? Where do you think that is this more of a cultural thing, or have you experienced this on the flip side where Europeans have been very laid back?
Uh, I don't think I've experienced it in Europe,
Okay.
where they've been laid back. And I'm definitely not also saying that. For instance, my team
Of
right now,
course.
Mayhem, like for instance, Mangachu, etc., like Manitin.
Mm-hmm.
Fact, I'm about to name the whole team actually. Before I do that, they all work very hard. So
Mm-hmm.
this is not about them at all. I mean, it's more so about some
Just
of the
in
other
general.
teams, let's say in tier three or that I've worked with that I can tell. Like for instance, in Europe, they have they have nothing. They have so much to work
Mm-hmm.
for instance, and like in game, some of my players like at one point were French, and then I remember in a HSL what I told them because they had Hidan on the other team, and the French community is very close knit.
Sure, sure.
I told them you're not going to go into the lobby, you're not going to say hello. They're not your friend today. They're your worst enemy because they're competing for you for your dream. They can take that away from you. So they don't going to they led the aggression.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things, and they didn't say hello. They were just focused. They were in their flow state of mind and
Mm-hmm.
hyper focus, and they went to the game and we did what we needed to do. So having that attitude and that not laid back mentality is really important, and I think Europe is really feeling it in terms of Overwatch
Mm-hmm.
because of the limited opportunities that they have. So I think definitely no shade at Paris, but there were a magnitude of Zarias they could have picked, right?
Hardest being one of them,
And
maybe.
yeah, hardest Onigod
Mm.
definitely being one of them. That they decided to put I'm sure Shadowburn was practicing hard, but he didn't previously play Zarya, didn't have that Zarya
Exactly.
experience, and they decided to put Shadowburn on it, right? So it's really heartbreaking to see
Mm-hmm.
the amount of opportunities that these players don't have. Because think about it, who don't know that Eagle Gaming didn't get a lot of the players didn't even get tryouts after they won contenders, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what contenders is for. It's for discovery. So imagine not winning contenders and then
And
not getting the
still
tryouts.
nothing.
Yeah,
Do you
that's really,
do you
and the
think that?
fact that these players still keep working after
Yeah.
that. Think about it. They just keep going. They keep going. The Eagle, they didn't get paid even. That's the worst part. They
Mm-hmm.
won the thing. They weren't getting paid, and then they join another team and they keep going. They keep working at it and they try their hardest. I mean,
It's
that's how
something
players and yeah,
you have to respect that. No,
yeah,
you don't. You might not have to give them tryouts, but you have to respect that tenacity and that effort that's being put in, and they're going to make you recognize them at some point. It might not be this season, it might not be next season, but at some point you're going to recognize them as they've been putting in the work. The least I can do is just give them a tryout.
yeah. And there's a lot of players in North America like this too.
Sure,
It's
of
not
course,
just
of course,
exclusive to region, but it's something that I've noticed in my time in Europe. And
definitely.
this is why, like, I love to look at the other regions. I'm not, I never want to be closed-minded.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never say X region is better than X region. Maybe at a time it is,
Sure,
but any region can win at a certain time. They just have to play the better game, and they have to just focus on their mistakes and fix them. That's it.
mm,
It's more so like play to your strengths,
definitely.
right?
I want to write that down because that's something maybe we can go back and talk on to strength. Um, Europe in particular, not a region in Overwatch that has a ton of resources behind it. Do you
Oh
kind of
yeah,
foresee in the future some of the best players coming from there because of that fact? Because they are just going to be there are going to be that select few that are entirely dedicated, that have this incredible work ethic, that don't really want anything but to be the best. Do you think this is just like a silent ticking time bomb until we just see, the next Bjergsen of Overwatch come out and start smashing? You think that's gonna happen?
it's I can't really say because
Sure.
the amount of resources, like you said, are very low in Europe. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe, but like for instance, in League at this time, tier two people are making six figures
Sure.
in League, right? And the amount of I'm not saying spoil Overwatch and pay all the tier two
Of
players six
course, of
figures,
course.
but like a lot of these players aren't even paid and
Mm-hmm.
they're still trying their hardest. So hopefully they do get picked up. Like I mean, but it's something that needs to be worked on consistently in tier two,
Definitely.
and we definitely will make it better because, you know, I do respect this Jane a lot
Mm-hmm.
because think about it, he doesn't owe anybody anything, but he went to Overwatch League, and he's always giving back to the tier 2 scene and helping develop it. And we need more people like this.
Definitely, you have to respect, shining a light, even if a small one, just a small tournament to kind of showcase who's got what, win,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, the
That
tournament,
matters.
future champions. There we go. There
Just
we go.
saw DCOD post about that. Shout outs to Tim. I don't know if they necessarily did all that well. It's just a brief one. No offense, DCOD,
Yeah.
if you ended up losing.
Yeah.
No shade. No shade. On that same note, I wanted to talk a little bit about the showdown events. Do you think this could be the highlight needed for Europe to kind of come out? Not necessarily saying, no blanket statement saying, oh, Europe's going to beat everybody, but will this put more of a foot forward for, the potential next Eagle Gaming to kind of come out and really showcase what they have on the near worlds level?
Yeah, I definitely think it could be an event that could showcase that, just like like we see in World Cup, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need more events like this, and I think this is definitely a step in the right direction, because yeah, like I said, there are a lot of players who will get that spotlight, and a lot of players in North America as well will get to play and practice versus players from Europe, and it'll be a fun event. It will definitely be a fun event for both sides, because I definitely think it can be close.
Sure.
It's just whoever works harder and prepares the best will win.
Now, as somebody who's coached both spectrums of the pond, I've been trying to hype this up because it doesn't seem like anybody's paying attention. But guys, Overwatch's season is going to be so crazy. We have the seasonal finals for season 2, and then we immediately go into contenders. The LAN events into qualifying and getting those storylines rotated out for the gauntlet towards, I think, the end of the year. So if there was a team that Mayhem Academy, like hypothetical, right? And to be fair, you guys are putting yourself in pretty good position to go to the Atlantic Showdown.
Yeah.
Is there a team you want to, see across the stage? Is there a team out there that you want to, definitely, test your mettle against?
Yeah, I definitely want to play versus Giganti.
Okay.
I want to knock them down a peg, specifically Devin.
All right, that's a name that is thrown out as an Overwatch League free agent that again parroted a lot. Again, I think solid player, could be put on teams, but is obviously thrown around a little bit more than maybe is warranted. It seems like everybody wants him on every team, and
right,
we're not necessarily trying to take any kind of nuance to this discussion. It's just like, put him on any team, I don't care. And there are some other European players that definitely deserve slots as well. So.
Yeah, and I think another team I'd like to play versus is British Hurricane. I have nothing but respect for Happy-Cool and Numlocked. Numlocked is actually, people don't realize how good he actually is because he didn't get to play. But
exactly.
This guy is really, really good at main tank, and hopefully he gets his opportunity.
He's a bit of a, gotta love the Brits. We've got Cruz and Owl talking a little ish. Numlocked,
as long as he keeps working hard, he will definitely succeed. So hopefully,
very marketable, I would say.
Yeah,
get him on your team. He's gonna definitely impress, not only on the server but outside of it as well.
Yeah.
But you recently, well, not really all that recently, but you had this interview with Gamehouse, and you talk about something that is kind of brought up a lot. About how sometimes there is an opinion that a coach needs to have some sort of high mechanical skill or be very good at the game that they coach, right?
Yeah.
So if you're good at Overwatch, it gives you a skill set that would lend itself to being a good coach. Would you necessarily agree with that? Would you say that it's necessary though?
Yeah, it depends on the coach that you want to be, but
exactly.
If you want to do strategy, I've hit top 500 in every role, right? And I don't say this to boost my ego or anything like this. I say this because it helps me learn micro. I can talk to my players, speak the same language, and there's no loss of interpretation or anything like this. We know exactly what we're talking about, right? And that's why I think it's necessary. It helps me understand each role and it definitely is an advantage, because if you think about a person who's watching VODs who does not play the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
What it tells me is, like, if you don't understand bubbles, if you don't understand matrix, if you don't understand a certain mechanic when it comes to a character, especially in goats, right? That means when you're reviewing these VODs, you don't know what to look for. Imagine, like, okay, well, yeah, I'm watching the VOD, something happens, and you don't play the game, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you play it like if you're gold, right?
Sure.
And it's very, very basic, and there's no understanding, you know. And that's why I think, from a strategy point of view, it is important. But I think the quote sometimes gets taken out of context,
Of course.
because if you are a performance coach, or if you're trying to bring out, the best in terms of psychologically, like a sports psychologist or something like that, like that kind of coach,
Mm-hmm.
then obviously, like, you don't need to be top 500 to coach in that regard, right? You can enable your players in a different way, you add value in a different way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do think it's necessary to an extent, and that's why, I mean, I talked to a few of the other coaches, and
Sure.
yeah, some disagree and some agree.
Definitely. And again, it's not something that I think is a hard and fast. I don't think it's necessarily a law, but it's
Yeah.
something that kind of pops up every now and then, and nobody really gives too much explanation to what they're saying. And
Yeah.
when I saw that, I'm like, okay, this is an interesting talking point, because we can really get into where exactly this is necessary and where it isn't. Like you said, if you're like a head coach, before the show you brought up, Coma is this,
Right,
doting
SKTs.
mother figure, and yes, SKT's famous, legendary almost, League of Legends coach, kind of goes around, Piglet, you're drunk, or Peanut, you're a little, intoxicated, come on off the stream, buddy. We don't necessarily need to, put that out there.
I remember that.
And he has this minor background in pro gaming when it goes back to StarCraft 2, but in League of Legends he wasn't necessarily known for being this huge brain, massive strategic coach. He has somebody else do that for him, and he's kind of the dad of the team, right? He takes care of people.
Yeah, he has a strategic coach, exactly.
And that guy, I would assume, probably has some experience playing at a high level.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, of course, and a lot of these players, like for instance, TSM right now, they have Lustboy.
Sure.
There's a lot of player coaches that have the experience, and same in like traditional sports. I mean, there are a lot that don't too, but you have to figure out in what way do they add value. That's why sometimes these coaches, they do well, because sometimes they need that coach who does more of the performance and sports psychology sort of things. And sometimes they need that coach who needs to do the strategy.
Definitely.
It depends on the team. It's always different. So yes, it can work. You can be a head coach and not play at the highest level, but it depends on what your team needs.
Definitely.
Because I've been on teams that do need that, I've been on teams that don't need that, and I've been on teams that have that somewhere in between. I've even been on teams that, even though I'm not a qualified, like I don't have a master's in sports psychologist, I did a lot of work, of like years of experience with this, right? Sometimes I'm in a team that needs that, to put them in the right state of mind. And I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and touch up on it again, because I see a lot of coaches, like who are not really paying attention to that, and they really need. Sometimes the team really needs that. So like, think about going into a game and not being in the correct state of mind. Like, I see some teams warming up straight away, right, and going into their game right away. I'm gonna use an example of like Michael Phelps, right, the Olympic swimmer, where he doesn't do a lap, and then get out of the pool, and then as soon as he gets out of the pool, the gun blows, whatever, and he jumps back into the pool, right? The official race doesn't start then, right? He listens to music, of Lil Wayne, right? And goes, gets into a flow state of mind, basically. He gets into a state of hyper focus. So the same thing, like imagine like just scrolling Discord, Twitter, and stuff like this before a game, and not really keeping your mind focused on what you learned, right? So like, yeah, definitely wanted to point that out, just because some teams definitely need sports psychology coaching too. And that's one of those fields that is just not looked at in Overwatch, and that's why you see a lot of comments or something like this whenever you see a Reddit or something, right, where you'll see teams are on burnout, why is there no sports psychologist? And then you'll see, like, for instance, Defran, who did talk to a sports psychologist, and he had a pretty good season for being his first season.
Definitely.
And it definitely helped him. You see what I'm saying? And there are a lot of teams that ignore it, and then they burn out, and then there's just internal conflicts.
Definitely.
And that's not so good. So Reddit, their users are actually smart on that one, I will say.
I definitely agree. I I think it is kind of used as a scapegoat sometimes. I will say
It can be.
You know
It
what I
can
mean?
be.
Like
It
it's
can
just
be.
thrown
Yeah.
out there. Like we mentioned before the show. Like, oh well, it's the comms are the issue. I mean,
Yeah.
it might be, but there's probably also a myriad of other problems and issues that are ailing the team. Whereas we can't just throw a sports psychologist at the problem and miraculously get fixed, because there might be other underlying issues. So like,
Right.
I totally
Exactly.
agree that like it's super healthy for a team to have that and have somebody that understands how the human brain works and understands that physiology. But I do find it odd.
Of course. Yeah.
That,
Of course. And that's
it's
why I
like,
said
oh
some.
well, look at
Yeah.
Astralis, like they have a sports psychologist and look how good they're doing.
No, no. I definitely. That's why I said like some teams need this, some
Exactly.
teams need. Yeah. So
Exactly.
like in some cases you do need it. In some cases, yeah, it's might not be the major factor, but yeah, in some cases it is.
So when we're talking about this strategic coach needing to at least be at a certain level, I wanted to kind of throw some very typical talking points you might hear if you posted this on Twitter and you get those, armchair.
Oh, I learned my lesson, so I'm not posting that on Twitter ever again.
So the typical responses you'd hear is like, you could know the game without being skilled at executing the mechanics, or that's just one style of coaching, which I think we touched on, to be fair.
Yeah.
Or talking about how many of the coaches, again, have found success and haven't been very skilled at the game, again, which we've touched on. It's different roles sometimes, and some of the coaches that still are in that role don't necessarily have to kind of don't meet that criteria but still do well. Would you kind of assume that they're maybe the exception? Maybe they've just have a knack for it. Where do these talking points kind of lead in your mind?
Can you say that again?
So first, we'll go with you can't know the game, or you can know the game. I'm sorry, you can know the game without being skilled at executing the mechanics. Where is that going to lead down?
I mean, it depends. In terms of macro, yeah, it's possible, I guess. But in terms of like, at some point, micro will tie into macro. That's what I've learned in both games, because it can, like for instance in League, one little mistake in like if you push a wave, let's in the time when lane swaps were a thing, it could make it so like your top laner screwed for the next 25 minutes of the game. You know what I mean? Like they just freeze a wave and he doesn't do anything and he's down 2 levels, and then it's terrible, right? Same thing, like in Overwatch, it can tie into macro, especially in goats, right? So yeah, like again, if you don't know what to look for, then it can be pretty catastrophic. So like if you don't play Zarya and you've never seen it before and you don't understand what a bubble does, and then somebody misuses a bubble and you don't identify that because you don't know what you're looking for, right? It can be a problem.
Definitely. And to be fair, we have kind of touched on the other two where that's just one style of coach, which
exactly.
It depends on the role.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like I think some coaches, first of all, it was just an opinion, right?
Of course, yeah.
Nobody should ever take offense to it, because I was responding to somebody's tweet.
Definitely.
And I gave my opinion, right? But yeah, like it shouldn't be like my whatever I say is not like a law. You know what I mean?
Of course.
As much as a person may or may not look up to me, it's not like that. Like you can prove me wrong if you want. I mean, it's just my opinion. That's all it is.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Now, within that same interview, you mentioned that you just happen to have a lot of unpopular opinions.
Oh yeah, I do.
What kind of comes to your mind? What's something that you've recently thrown at somebody and was like, oh, I totally disagree, or what's some unpopular opinions you've got mulling around in your head these days?
I have so many, but obviously I have to be very careful with what I say.
Of course, yeah. Again,
but I'll just use I'll just use the cop out answer. But I usually like to be very real with that's why there's a lot of the stuff I say I don't fabricate it or whatever to please an audience. I just want to be real, because like for instance what I'm about to say will help the community a lot, right? So when in NA here, there are a lot of times when a team cancels on another team, right? And in League, if a team cancels on another team, the teams that were double booked, right? So usually cancels happen when a team double books, right? So they're like, oh, I double booked a scrim and we're scrimming these guys instead. right? They would scrim both the teams that were double booked on would scrim each other instead, and the person who made the mistake and double booked, right, wouldn't get a scrim because it was their mistake. And then so it doesn't screw one person out of the practice basically. So like for instance, there are a lot of people who are late, or there are a lot of people in tier 2 right now who are just canceling streams consistently, and this needs to be a thing because it will teach people like to be either on time, and it'll teach them to be better managers. Definitely. It's better in the long term. So it's a very hot take, but obviously there's some situations where they might be scrimming the team that you're playing in the upcoming week's match, and you can't really scrim them, right? But most of the time that's not the case. So
definitely. To talk about the Overwatch League for a moment, you had mentioned that playing for your strengths is something that and feel free to step in if I'm misquoting you at all. But playing for your strengths is something that is important, right? Yeah. And we've seen a team like Chengdu, the Chengdu Hunters, come out and almost take that to the nth degree, right? Where they're kind of adding their own interesting style to the metagame at the moment. Would you say that that's something that teams could explore a little bit more, where they don't necessarily have to play goats or this hard and fast metagame composition, where if they meet these criterias, do you think that this could be explored a little bit more and strategies could be a little bit more diverse?
Yeah, and definitely. And one of the things that separates us right now, like in contenders, is it leads up to this point. It's like it's better. It's something I always tell my players as soon as I join the team. It's better to innovate rather than imitate, right? So because of this, yeah, I mean Chengdu is doing great, and it's really playing to your strengths, like you said. So yeah, a lot of teams they can do this, and that's why like in League, for instance, this year, teams were playing their own style, NA Clown Fiesta style, for instance, right? Where they were just like, it was just random, just everything, super right?
Chaos.
And then they, for the first year in 6 years, they beat Korean teams. Yeah. And they actually made it to, I believe it was quarters and then semis or something like that, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So really, like, yeah, it definitely is doable. But the way I look at it is, if you try to copy the original, right, you'll never be as good. The prototype, you'll never be as good. So yeah, it is doable, and that's why, like for instance, with goats, it was, ever changing for when it came out. Yeah, it started with Moira, went to Ana, went to Zen, and then stuck to Zen. They saw a little bit of Sombra, but that's very situational. But there's a lot of different variations with floats, even when WGS came out with it in Korea, right, and their contenders trials. With the monkey goats, basically, with floats. And then, you see different variations with Moira floats, right? There's many variations, and that's really how you innovate. So, yeah, the comp might be good, but they're different variations. So instead of morphing it, never do something random, right? With I don't know, 5 tanks and a Lucio, although that was a thing once upon a time. But, like, yeah, you can do it. And now see that actually proved my point, because five tanks and Lucio for a small part of the time when Rialto was first introduced was okay. It was okay to run a stupid comp like this, and it worked, right? So that's further proves my point. You know what I mean?
Definitely. There is that the innovation, and every so often you see a team that you'd probably be very familiar with, Winstrike at the time, exclusively running the May. How annoying is that to figure out and to break your players again? I may have just given him a migraine.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, you're giving me some flashbacks right now.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so basically, with Windstrike, it took us around 3 weeks to figure them out. Imagine scrimming them in 3 weeks and just losing. Oh my god, that was frustrating, man. That was oof. Not a good time.
I can only imagine that, and I talk to some of the players, and I like to do contenders interviews because they're way more feasible to get in touch with, because I don't have to go through PR firms and this, that, the other thing. It's just like, hey, do you want to do an interview? Yes, no.
Sure.
And that was always one thing that I thought was really interesting. It's like, how do you guys prepare for Windstrike? Because this, like, there's no way that anybody plays this as good as they do, and you don't want to just scrim them a week before you play them. So, like, how are you going about practicing for this? And I can only imagine some of the OWL teams are approaching Chengdu like this as well, where it's just like,
oh yeah, exactly.
What do you do with monkey, or what do you do with this ball comp? Like, who plays this as good as anybody? Like,
yeah, think about it. You never scrim it, because you just nobody else is playing this shit. So like, Yeah, definitely. Like it was lucky though because at the same time it wasn't lucky. It was strategy. Where we wanted to scrim them because we needed to figure it out.
Sure, of
Imagine
course.
we're there in our side of the like playoff bracket and we
Mm-hmm.
didn't scrim them at all. So yeah, no other team plays it, but we needed to figure it out because we were comfortable versus other teams. We understood goats and we were at such a high level that we were just winning everything. So we really wanted to practice versus this.
Definitely, definitely. And you mentioned Sombra in a previous question, and I've heard some stirrings, especially from some European coaches, that maybe their opinion on Sombra isn't as high as maybe the Overwatch League coaches.
Oh
So
yeah,
where do you
yeah.
kind of fall on that scale? Is Sombra good? Is Sombra bad? Are we somewhere in the middle? Where do you think the Sombra fad has come from? Is it good? Is it bad?
Well, the Sombra fad came from it was even before back in October. Some of the Korean teams were playing the Sombra variant
Mm-hmm.
back then as well. Just people didn't really pay attention to it too much. They would only play it on maps like Hanamura and stuff like this. But
Mm-hmm.
um, I definitely am more on the other side where I don't think it's actually that great.
Mm-hmm.
I do think there are situations where it could work. But yeah, I definitely think not having the diva is really rough. I mean, diva offers a lot more as well,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're playing goats v goats, if the other team knows how to play correctly and they play fast, like it's very difficult to pull that off. Because that's how you play versus Sombra. You have to play fast,
Right.
and that's why like when somebody sees the Sombra, they kind of just they don't know what to do. And at first, people were like having trouble figuring it out, but eventually they did. And well, at least in no leaks, but I mean like obviously like in like that's not what some of the teams figure out.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And again, that's something that, it seems like as some of the series progressed, most notably, I thought that London and Paris throughout that entire match, it felt like Paris kind of understood exactly how to deal with this. It felt like after halftime, especially on route, they felt like it felt like they were way more comfortable playing a little bit more aggressive into that somber comp, and they found a lot of success with it. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So is it that maybe there isn't like this hyper strong goats team to kind of punish those somber compositions? Is it a lack of understanding? Is
I
that
think
is that kind of
there
what I'm
is
getting?
there is a lack of understanding, and I see a lot of mistakes in owl.
Mm.
And again, I'm just being real. Again, I have
Of
those
course, yeah.
unpopular opinions. I'm not acting like I'm better than anyone else because that's not my goal. But from my analytical perspective, yeah, there are a lot of mistakes. Like for instance, on Dorado, like there are a lot of teams not even using fakes, right? Where like for instance, if somebody's spawn holding you on Dorado, I'll use this example
Hmm.
since it's not in our map pool. I mean, it's not really, but if people are spawn holding on defense, right, on
Hmm.
red, on the red building in Dorado, people would just go to the payload and go in. That you could fake to the stairs, and then eventually the way the meta evolved is people would then realize like, okay, we can't give them stairs, so they'd meet them at stairs, and so they couldn't go that way, and they'd choke them out. And then what we did was also just double fake. So we would go to payload, go through the stairs, and try to meet us at stairs, and then we'd go through the red building
So you
and
pull
come
them
out
off
the other
high
side.
ground for free, basically.
Yeah, they were on the stairs, and then we got the corner basically.
Hmm.
So they couldn't play the corner. The Rhine couldn't play the corner since we double faked into red and came out. They were forced back, and the whole point of it also was to get that two fights in, right, and try to burn as much time off the clock,
Of
right.
course.
And they weren't able to do that. They only got one fight because of the double fake. So like there are a lot of things that I'm seeing that some of the teams are not understanding in terms of fakes, in terms of pathing, in
Hmm.
terms of pathing versus certain ultimates. People are just running it down mid sometimes, not paying attention to, okay, they have grav, we can't go this way. There's a wall right here. They can just grab the wall. You can't even pass. It's like the freeze. They can't even eat the grav, or we can't even eat the grav. So I see these kind of rudimentary mistakes. I definitely think there's a layer that's missing in some of the teams. I mean, there on the flip side though, there are also a lot of teams that are really impressive. That being San Francisco Shock,
Mm.
I think are a very underrated team. I think this Super it's probably one of the best main tanks right now in the league, by the way, and he gets no credit.
Nope.
He's starting to, but he gets no credit. But he's not a KD player. That's why his stats might not look amazing, but he definitely knows what he's doing. And then Vancouver as well, definitely showing good understanding of the meta.
I don't know how much you've necessarily, because obviously you have the contenders gig, and that's kind of priority number one. But Vancouver is a team that has drawn the ire of some, but obviously the fandom of the runaway crowd has
Runaway, right,
been
right, right.
with them for almost ever. Where do you kind of fall on Bumper as a very analytical coach? Where is that team style going in the future? Do you think it's exploitable?
Oh yeah, I mean, honestly, like it feels like when I watch Bumper, sometimes I just don't understand how some of the stuff works. He's like legit at their spawn, like trolling, or sometimes he's just charging like randomly. Like, what works. I'm sure that's his play style, but
Sure.
I mean, that's my analytical perspective. Like, I guess like he's a very unorthodox player, but in terms of analyzing his gameplay, like I'm not going to tell my fact function, yo, charge into the team 1v6 like sometimes, or hide back here when they have the one time I saw him hide when they had a Sombra.
How
So
does that
like
work?
okay, yeah, he was trying to hide,
Yeah.
right, and make like a flank shatter, but
The
they have a
Sombra
Sombra. I mean,
probably will see you.
they probably will see you, right? So I'm like thinking like,
How does that?
and then he just dies, and I'm like, well,
Coulda,
surprise, like
yeah.
I didn't see
Shocker,
that one
guys.
coming, like.
Yeah. Or his famous, charge into 180 shatters where it's just like, how intuitive are you gonna get, buddy? Like this is I don't even know that you understand what you're doing. It's just your team supports you very well, and you're just going for these flashy plays. And sometimes they work, and sometimes they don't.
See, and that's the thing. Like I'm saying the mistakes. I mean, there's obviously a lot of good part. Obviously, he won the stage, but him and his team won the stage. So I mean, there's a lot of good as well. But in terms of in good, yeah, I mean, Ryan play is okay in that regard. But yeah, the mistakes really stick out. Is what I'm trying to say. You can't ignore the mistakes.
No, of course, it's a very clear play style.
I want to know the first thought that I thought like when I saw like him charging 1v6. I was like, he's been watching my stream. The cinematic Ryan.
There you go. We're trying to get the plays, trying to get play the games.
Yeah, I was like, well, oh no. I see myself in you. That's not a good thing though.
No, not really. So you mentioned in an article with a good friend of mine, Yiska, talking about like the new patch and where we're headed. Obviously, you guys are probably going to be playing that on the playoffs, so not a ton of time probably invested into that, but just kind of your thoughts. I know Winston, Soldier, Sombra has been thrown all around a lot. Bunker is what I kind of went to when I saw these changes. Now, obviously, Orisa, Soldier, maybe even a Baptiste, Junkrat, maybe playing on defense, not necessarily attack. I don't know. What's your thoughts?
Man, Orisa Baptiste seems to be very, very strong. Right now, these bunker comps do seem very strong. So most likely we'll see this. I do like Winston, the Winston change too. I've got to try a bit of it. I think overall, like it's too early to say, but that's what I really like about it right now. It's more so like Winston and the Orisa comps. But what I'm really hoping for is like Ashe to come into play, because I feel like that would be a really fun hero, both to have strategy around and also to spectate. I think it'd be very, very good. Like it's like a mix between Widow and McCree. And McCree is fun to watch. Widow at some point, people are complaining about goats, but they don't remember the Mercy meta, where so many people were complaining about sniper res. Like it's the same thing. So basically, like I don't want to spectate a meta like this. So hopefully, we'll see that. But at the same time, another hot take is like I really like goats meta. I really do. It's like a very MOBA kind of feel to it.
That's where I was gonna go. It's like it goes back to your wheelhouse, where it is resource trading, it's management of resources, and investing in certain areas and not investing in others.
And like you have to also like realize like Overwatch is a really fast-paced game, but this meta slows it down, and it makes it and that's the other thing, when you know what to look for, it's like a dance, really. Like it's like a beautiful dance. Like from an analytical perspective, there's the ebb and flow, like a wave. And when you understand the game and you see it like this, it's really good. And you come up with the strategies. Like my mind is always working, and that's why like in terms of pathing, sometimes we take very, very weird routes. We don't just go down the same place every time, but there's thought to this, method to this madness, right?
Yeah.
And teams start to copy, and then like, but yeah, it's really good.
I mean, to your credit, I think it was even featured in the Gamehouse interview. One.Point doing the speed across the pond on Li Zhang.
Oh yeah.
That was a big one that I personally hadn't seen up until that point. I try to keep up with as many contenders regions as possible, but that one slipped through.
Even on Dorado,
innovative.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, the fakes on Dorado,
Exactly.
or like the way I'll explain it, why MOBA mentality comes to this, because it'll be I think it was ZP who made the quote that even after
Mm-hmm.
this meta, it'll be really good in dive, it'll increase the level of play.
Yeah.
Where like when you do fakes, for instance, you have to think about it in league, you know, there were wards, right?
Of
So if
course.
you put, like, let's say you're playing mid lane and you
Mm-hmm.
put a ward on the right,
Mm-hmm.
right? A pink ward. You feel safe, so you play towards that side. Or if you put a pink ward on the other side, or a ward on this side and then put a pink ward on the other, then basically the laner is going to think, well, he put a ward here and he's hugging this side, so if I'm playing on this side, I'm going to go to this side, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the terms of psychology, it will always make the other team go to a certain side, and then you can take the space for free, or you can catch somebody out if they don't rotate correctly,
Mm-hmm.
especially in goats, right? Because if you make a wrong play, your back line can become your front line.
Yep.
That's basically kind of the mind games to it when ults are not involved. So first fight, this is something that's really important.
It's Goats has been, love it or hate it, it has left a lasting impact. Like ZP said, I think Sideshow had a very poignant quote, very much in the same line, where it at least has taught us something. Whether you like it or not, it's taught the viewers, the players, something very important about Overwatch, and really pushing the the management of these resources, and
Right.
not making them so so just constantly used and not really thought about, and not putting method to exactly when and where we're using them.
You use a bubble like just randomly, you get punished for it if
Exactly.
you're playing versus a good team.
Yep.
So yeah, exactly. You have to think about everything, and that's what I like about it. Because before it was just like, shoot. Like I'm not trying to take away skill, but I mean,
Sure.
there was strategy was a lot different. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But now the strategy has evolved, and that's why now it won't. When the shooting meta comes back, I'm not calling it the shooting meta. I can't believe it. But when FPS meta comes back, we'll call it that. Basically, there'll be more strategy than just point and click.
Definitely.
You know, there'll be that strategy where you know, trading movements, which was already a strategy, but there'll be more advanced methods to this. So, and you know, I have a few things in mind too. I'm not going to leak it, but
No.
you know, just like you saw something like the 1 point thing or whatever about going with the speed boost. You know, there'll be different things that come up with different teams similar to this, and yeah, I can't wait to figure, you know, new things out in regard to this.
Well,
I love
again,
strategy.
me too. I appreciate Assault as a game mode. I might not like to play it, but I love watching it because it feels like it's so diverse, and can be so creatively acted upon.
Right.
But as we're kind of winding down the interview, I like to give the subject, my tiny soapbox, to kind of talk about anything that they want to mention before we close out the show, or just to kind of give any shout outs to anybody and their supporters, or maybe. So again, this last couple minutes are yours to ramble without being interrupted by me.
Okay, well, I guess I can do a little bit of shout outs, but
Sure.
so thanks to my team, my supporters, and all the previous players that I've coached. Obviously, I wouldn't be here without them. And you know, like again, anybody who used to watch my stream and stuff like this, obviously I can't stream during the season. I mean, I can, but I really want to focus during the season. But yeah, I want to thank them as well for, you know, supporting me back then and even now. Like sometimes I see them in the I see my emotes. Some of my emotes are, ooh, you know, they're like very very creepy. So one of them is just like my giant face, and I see that in the contender chat. I'm like, oh no 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 no, you know. But yeah, I just want to thank them all for the support. And yeah, we play Boston Uprising this week, and on Monday it will be the first match of the day, and you can see our match there.
Any predictions? Are we gonna crush them?
Any predictions?
Easy 4-0?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. But obviously, you know, there's a curse. The curse where like, you know, somebody says
taunt to get body.
yeah,
That's the Smash.
yeah, and then suddenly boom, you know, like
Yeah.
they crash and burn. You know what I mean? So yeah, but yeah, it should be.
Interesting. Again, a lot of the Overwatch community has been, or maybe I've just gotten lucky and had some amazing guests. I definitely would love to have you back on.
Awesome.
It's been a blast. Hopefully this hasn't been too terribly boring.
No.
That's good. But this has been episode 15 of Delve Further. Follow the socials under Curryshot's face. You'll have his Twitter. Go definitely follow him and support Mayhem Academy. I think they've been doing some amazing work from a team that's, not looked super great last season to a team that's leading the pack with a crazy, crazy map differential. I think, they've put in a ton of work and effort, and it shows, right? So definitely go show them some love. Follow me on the YouTubes and the Anchor and the podcasting, all that good stuff. And until I decide to do episode 16, I'll see you then. I'm not going to hold myself to a date. You get it when you get it, kids, okay? So we'll see you in episode 16.